Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Tom Shukas, Network Engagement Coordinator, and I want to thank you all for joining us today as we discuss the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Social Media RFP. This RFP is an exciting 3-year funding opportunity for Lifeline Crisis Centers to serve as moderator for the Lifeline social media sites. In order to best help all of you understand how to prepare your applications for this RFP opportunity, Lifeline QI Contracts Coordinator Elizabeth Manishek is going to use this time we have today to provide an overview of the RFP's purpose, requirements, expectations, and any of the in-between details about this opportunity. As we move through the presentation, if any of you would like to ask for any further clarity or share a question, please feel free to use the GoToWebinar chat feature that you'll find within the GoToWebinar toolbar. And then at the end, we're going to set aside some time for Elizabeth and our Director of Communications, Francis Gonzalez, to answer some of those questions you might have asked. Lastly, before I turn it over to Elizabeth, if you're using a device with a microphone, please make sure that it's muted so we can avoid any background noises. And if you're unable to stay for the entire duration, we all have busy work days, don't worry, there is going to be a recording of the webinar as well as an outline of any of the frequently asked questions, any of the important questions that need to be answered before the deadline up on the Network Resource Center. So be on the lookout for that in the next couple of days. And with that, I will hand the webinar over to Elizabeth.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. So welcome everybody to the social media moderation webinar. As Tom said, we're just going to review some of pretty much go through the request for proposal that was sent out to everybody, review what's in there, what's important, and give you mostly an opportunity to ask us questions that you may have had while you were looking through it. So this may not take too long, and we'll kind of be very mindful of everybody's time. So Tom, slide. Okay. So obviously the objective of this RFP and this webinar is kind of to review those requirements and the expectations with our social media RFP, the moderation RFP. Tom? So some of the basic facts and things for you to know. This is a grant that will be for one Lifeline Networked Crisis Center. That's a question I've already received a few times through email. So just for clarification, it is just one center. It will be for a duration of the 3 years, but since this is expanding, there will be a review of the contract every year. The application deadline for this RFP is November 30th at 5 p.m. Eastern. It's really important to be mindful of that deadline as we will not accept anything past that time. If you're familiar with our RFP process, we also always have a deadline for Q&A. So you can send questions to me through email up through November 26th at 5 o'clock. And when I receive those questions, I will reply within 24 hours, business hours generally. And then I will also add that question to one document that we will post on the NRC so that everyone can see the questions that have been asked. And those questions will be posted on the 27th, so it will give you a couple of days before the deadline to review and see if there's any answers there that you need while you're finishing up. We will be sending out email award notices on December 18th to let the Crisis Center know who's received the grant. We will also, if you've applied, we'll also let you know if you did not receive the grant. All of these materials are available on the Network Resource Center at the link that's provided both in the email announcement and then also in the slides here. So another question that I've gotten a few times already is what are the social media moderators going to be doing? So you're going to be providing moderation support for all of the Lifeline social media accounts, which includes the Lifeline Facebook page, the You Matter Facebook page, and the You Matter blog. So you could be responding to either posts or comments or messages with any sort of concerning materials or comments, or any sort of allusion or statement about suicide. You'd be engaging with and supporting that online community by also providing resources and making sure that that environment continues to be a positive one for all those that are participating. So specifically, the guidelines that we have for whoever does the moderation is to review the Lifeline Facebook page at least every 3 hours, every day of the week, and to comment as necessary. We'd like there to be a response within those 3 hours to those posts, and the comments and messages that indicate any sort of concern or suicidality. We'd also like you to review the You Matter Facebook and the You Matter WordPress blog at least once daily at some set time, and comment as necessary, again, with those concerning comments or any sort of suicidal ideation. There will also be reports that you will turn in to Francis. Currently, there are a few objectives and details, pieces of data that we collect that may be changing, and Francis would let you know if there is any additional information that we need to know while you've been monitoring the site. So the compensation for the One Crisis Center will be $40,000 per year. It will be paid in quarterly stipends of $10,000 for 10 and a half quarters of service, as this program does not start until January 15th of 2019. The payments will be made by invoice. So in order to be paid, you would provide an invoice as well as have to be preparing those reports and giving those to Francis with any of the deliverables and the data that we're looking for. So who's eligible? Any of the crisis centers that meet just a couple pieces of criteria. One, having to have been a member of the Lifeline for at least the last 6 months, which in this case would be May 30th of 2018. You also have to be a crisis center that operates 24/7, 365, as comments, posts, social media is round the clock, and sometimes some of the most concerning posts can be made on the overnights. And we'd also like for the crisis center to maintain a current social media presence themselves. So the application materials and submission, everything can be downloaded at the Network Resource Center. The RFP is available there. And then again, that questions deadline is Monday, November 26th at 5 o'clock. And then I will post the questions, the one document, on the 27th. And then the applications themselves are due by email to me November 30th, 2018 at 5 p.m. I know that it's a lot of repeating the same dates. It's just really important to be mindful of those dates. So in order for an application to be complete, for it to be considered, it has to include certain sections. And it's incredibly important to have whomever is submitting this really review and make sure that your application is complete before it's sent. Otherwise, it could delay whether or not we're able to have it reviewed. So the first part that you will need is a cover sheet. That's section A. It'll list these different items here, the name of your agency, who the point of contact will be for this specific service that you're providing. If there's a project lead that's different, also email addresses, mailing addresses, and the years of current operation. The second part of the application is section B, and that's your narrative proposal. And within that, we need to know about your organization's experience with operating, moderating social media, what you're already doing, what you already know. We also need to understand your organization's capacity to moderate the Lifeline social media sites. And a question that I've gotten a lot as well has to do with how often are you having to respond to these social media websites, how much time is it taking, and that is something that we will address at the end when we get to the question section. Within this narrative, we'd also like you to outline a plan for delivering this social media moderation that begins on January 15th, 2019, and include in there a description of how you are going to provide that within those Lifeline guidelines. So the stipulations of the times when you're checking the sites, and then there will be additional training provided to you with additional responses and guidelines for the organization that's chosen. The fee structure for the 4 quarters of service. So the Lifeline will consider a retainer or other fair compensation structure. This needs to be included within your narrative. And then if you have prior experience as a social media moderator, a crisis center that's provided this for us before, we'd like to hear your organization's history with providing that service, as well as highlight some success stories, different impact metrics, and then efforts that you've made to improve the way that services are delivered. Because we know we're always learning and growing, and not everything is perfect right off the bat. So how you kind of improve your services is really important as well. So once we receive everybody's applications by November 30th at 5 o'clock, we will send those applications to 2 independent reviewers who will score each application. When necessary, if applications end up scored within 10 points of each other, we will use a third backup score reviewer who will also review the submissions and give us their scores. If you're interested, the comments from the reviewers will be available at your request. After we've awarded the service, the grant to one of this crisis centers, if there is a concern, there is an appeal process. Applicants are welcome to submit an appeal only when evidence indicates that Vibrant Emotional Health has not followed all the steps of the protocols that we've outlined here in the RFP materials. Process of appeals will be accepted for 1 week after the application results have been posted on the Network Resource Center. Okay, so again, with any questions that you will have after this webinar, anything that comes up, you would go ahead and email me. My email address is located here. You can also call, although email is a easier way for us to communicate back and forth and for me to really get you a full answer. So if anybody has any questions, now is the time, and Tom will sort of direct us to those answers.
Like I mentioned before, feel free to include any questions that you have in the chat feature. If anyone has any concerns or things that are brought up during the presentation that didn't make sense. I only just realized that my camera was on the whole time, so I hope you appreciated my face intently listening to Elizabeth's presentation.
Francis, was there anything that you wanted to add while people might be asking questions?
Sorry, I was on mute. So saying hi, everybody. If we haven't met before, I'm Francis Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Communications for the Lifeline, and you would be working with me and my colleague Ashley Vactor on managing these pages. I do want to say that we do have guidelines that we provide that outline a lot of different scenarios that you might come up with. Those are updated every year, and we also provide training to the center that upon onboarding as well. So, to teach you how to check the pages, how to look through them, how to identify things, and we also provide, some common responses to the most frequently asked questions that you get. We also, because it's such a close relationship, because it's just us and one center, we usually develop the kind of relationship where you can shoot me a line if something's not working right, if you've come across a question that that you didn't anticipate, or that there's an event in the news that happened and people are writing about it on our page. All those things tend to, they're not predictable, but they're solvable. And we would work with you to kind of address those and solve those issues as well. Elizabeth mentioned something about things like volume. And there are days, as you'll know, where you check the Facebook page and there's maybe 2 comments in the entire day, and then something will happen on the news, or maybe Ashley will make a really great social media post, and then it turns into 15 comments within 24 hours, 20 comments within an hour. Those things happen. They're a little hard to predict. They don't happen frequently, luckily enough. But when that happens, those will be times when we'll be able to provide extra support as well, and extra guidance in those scenarios. So this is definitely not a situation where you'd be walking alone. We do the 3-hour, we do take the 3-hour monitoring thing, checking every 3 hours very seriously, if only because the Facebook community that we have is very supportive. They're very supportive to each other. They're very positive. They're mostly very close-knit. You'll get some trolls every once in a while, but fewer than you think. And so we take that community really seriously, and that organic growth really seriously. And so you would be helping to make sure it stays that way, and to grow that, and to turn it into a really great community as well. So those are guidelines and tools then that are constantly being updated. With your feedback, we can create new tools based on what you need. And essentially, it would be a learning process, and we'd be able to grow together there.
Great, excellent. Tom, have you received any questions?
Nothing yet. Chat box is still open. Of course, if you're having any difficulties, you can also email us. We're at our computer, so we can respond to some questions that you might have that way. I don't see anything yet.
Okay. I'm going to assume that's because, Elizabeth, you did such an amazing job, and your slides are so good, and it's actually a very straightforward RFP too, I think.
Let's go with that.
I don't think that's a stretch to say at all.
Okay, well then I really appreciate everybody attending, and again, this is going to be available, and I am available up through the 26th of November to answer any questions, so feel free to shoot those over if later on something comes up.
Great. All right, thank you all for joining us. Again, if any questions come up, feel free to email us. Take note of those deadlines, and we hope you'll consider applying. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.